Hey, what's going on everybody? It's Dom from Lensprotogo and Lens Rentals. Welcome back to the channel. So at first glance, this camera setup I have right here, maybe minus the cage and rails, might just look like a regularly large photo setup with a large lens, like a medium format rig or something. But what if I told you that this is a full-frame anamorphic video setup that's approved for Netflix productions? And if you were just sitting there like, I don't believe you, well, A, have some trust, okay? And B, you're wrong, because the Lumix S1H, shortly after its release, was approved by Netflix to be used as a main camera on a production that ends up on their streaming service. And on paper, this isn't a terribly hard thing to achieve. It's just a lot of stuff like video specs and compatibility with other gear in that filmmaking realm. But the real noteworthy thing is that it's usually reserved for actual cinema cameras. So that definitely makes the Lumix S1H one of the smallest and cheapest cameras that's considered in this circle. The S1H is a $3,500 body currently, and this lens is $1,500. So camera and lens alone, that's a very capable cinema rig for only $5,000 that could put in some serious work on a cinematic project. Like, you could shoot an entire project on just this setup if you really wanted that creative constraint. And for just a few hundred more, this setup could get that much more professional with 12-bit 5.8K video raw recorded to an external monitor via HDMI. So like a Ninja V would be absolutely perfect for that. And in that case, you'll also need SSD media to record that to. And it's probably best to get a cage built up around the camera at that point too. So now, still under 6,000 USD, we have a super impressive mini cinema rig that's capable of recording full-frame 12-bit 5.8K raw anamorphic video de-squeezed in camera, and that video looks seriously good. Pretty much the whole tail end of this video is going to be showing sample and test footage I was able to get with this lens in a couple of different recording modes, so you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about. But for now, I want to highlight some features about this rig that are really exciting to me, because getting approved for Netflix productions is cool and all, but there's some really unique things going on with this camera lens dynamic here that I know a lot of filmmakers out there are going to want to hear about. First off, let's chat about this lens. This is a 1.6x stretch factor anamorphic 50mm T2.9 lens that covers a full frame imager. This is pretty noteworthy for a couple of reasons, the first one being full frame coverage. Cinema lenses, let alone anamorphic lenses, much more commonly only illuminate a Super 35 size sensor. And this full frame coverage makes this lens a perfect match for the Lumix S1H, which is very well suited for full frame video. Sirui has already proven to us that an affordable anamorphic lens with a more than decent look is absolutely possible for smaller formats. But now we're talking about much larger non-spherical optics here, which is usually what drives up the cost of anamorphic lenses, but at $1,500, Sirui is challenging that standard once again. At the 1.6x stretch factor, this is shy of the full 2x anamorphic stretch experience, and I can only assume the spec that they were really going for here was full frame coverage over that 2x amount of stretch. But you absolutely get those anamorphic characteristics with the 1.6x, it's just not as greatly exaggerated as it would be if this was a 2x anamorphic. This being a bit of an in-between stretch ratio also must have kept down the weight and size of this lens, because if this was a 2x stretch factor, I can only imagine this lens would be a lot larger. And currently, as it stands right now, the weight and size of this lens is really manageable. And you can even screw on an ND on the front using an 82mm filter thread. Okay, next let's move on to the camera. And if you've been paying attention to Lumix full frame mirrorless line, you'd know that the Lumix S1 and more video focused S1H have some pretty impressive video specs. They're both capable of 10-bit 422 4K video recording using the entire full frame sensor area. They also have the V-Log color profile built in, and the in-body image stabilization is seriously good, enough to handhold even for longish focal lengths. Specific to this rig though, the S1H can record 12-bit raw video to an HDMI recorder using the entire imager at 5.8K 30 frames per second, or in DCI 4K up to 60 frames per second. And this is a real cinematic highlight for me. Like, a lot of people just equate shooting on anamorphic lenses to the cinematic look, but I think a high bit depth video signal is much more important to a cinematic project if I had to choose one of those traits over the other. So just that alone is enough to make me want to go out and shoot a movie using this rig alone. And then you find out that the S1H has even more stuff built in that makes the anamorphic experience that much smoother and more approachable. First note there, in-camera anamorphic D-squeeze offered in a few different magnification ratios. And oddly, the 1.6x factor of this lens doesn't exactly align with any of those given ratios, but I just shot in the 1.5x mode and it was basically the exact same. Another great thing, I mentioned how good the Ibis is in Lumix's new full-frame mirrorless line. Well, the S1H has a special Ibis mode for anamorphic shooting, and that can also be adjusted based on the stretch factor of the lens. This is really well thought out because typically pairing an anamorphic lens on a body with in-body stabilization can result in weird, jittery warpiness going on in the corners. Something that can be noticeable on a regular lens, but it can even be more pronounced with funky glass like anamorphic. With this setting on, you can literally operate this as a handheld setup, no problem. Something that a lot of other cinema cameras that offer these specs cannot say. And I didn't notice a massive difference with the anamorphic Ibis on compared to the regular stabilization in a quick test, but I'm sure on a wider anamorphic this might be a lot more helpful. Okay, so those are basically all the main features I wanted to highlight with this camera setup right here. And mainly, I'm just so excited that all these cinema-focused things are contained within this one rig, especially a lot of features that are specifically tailored for anamorphic shooting, making that process just easier and smoother. So now, I'm going to shut my trap and roll a whole bunch of test footage I was able to get with this rig, some of which was recorded internally in 4K DCI up to 60 frames per second, and some of which was in its 5.8K RAW recorded to a Ninja, and that's only going to be up to 30 frames per second. So enjoy. All right, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up on this video, highlighting some of the key features of this awesome Netflix-approved video rig. And just to recap, this is the Sirui 50mm T2.9 1.6x Anamorphic lens in L mount for the Lumix S1H, and we got a little help there from the Ninja V to record that 5.8K raw video too. So all in all, this package really kicks butt in terms of capturing high bit depth 4K video, and also there's a lot of built-in support that's really friendly for just like general filmmaking applications too, so big bonus there. So as always, if you have any questions about this lens or the body or really any gear that you saw in this video, drop a comment in the comment section below and we'll start a discussion. Is there a lens that you would rather put on this camera, or is there a camera that you'd rather put on this lens? Or maybe you would switch out the cage or something, or an accessory? Let me know. Also, if you happen to like this video, hit it with a thumbs up button down below to let me know you liked it. And if you're not already for whatever reason, hit that subscribe button too down there, and that way you'll be in the loop whenever we post new content, which is every week. So take care, and we'll see you in the next one.